Picture this. You're a game director at Capcom in 2002. Your samurai action franchise just had a disappointing second entry. Sales are down, particularly in Europe. Your boss walks in and says, "We need to reach a Western audience." And somehow, the solution your team lands on is this. Send the samurai to Paris and bring a French cop back to feudal Japan. And then you hire John Reno and Donnie Yen to make it happen. Before we get into the beautiful chaos that is Onimusha 3, I need to tell you about the first game, because it matters. Onimusha Warlords was, and I don't use this word lightly, perfect for what it was. It was short, maybe 3 hours if you knew what you were doing, but it had more personality per square inch than games 3 times its size. That castle, that atmosphere, the way the whole thing just breathed with feudal Japan dread. And then there was the ending. Your hero, Samanosuke, defeats the Demon King, saves Princess Yuki, and then disappears under a pile of rubble. And the narrator, in that quiet voiceover, tells you that no one ever found out what happened to him. Oh yeah, I was gutted. Genuinely. I'd spent an afternoon with this guy, fighting monsters, keeping his word, doing everything right, and he just vanishes. No body, no closure, just gone. That's why I skipped Onimusha 2. I didn't want a new protagonist. I wanted to know what happened to him. I did eventually go back and play the second game, years later, and it's genuinely great. Different protagonist, new story, excellent in its own right. But here's the thing. Europe didn't care. The numbers were rough. Onimusha 2 barely made a dent compared to the first game in Western markets. And for Capcom's marketing department, this was a problem that needed solving. Their franchise had momentum, but only in Japan. So they asked the question every publisher eventually asks when their Japanese IP underperforms abroad. How do we make this feel more Western? The answer, apparently, was geography. They actually looked at the US first. There was apparently a version of this conversation where Samanosuke ends up in New York. I like to imagine him arguing with customs about bringing a demon-slaying gauntlet through JFK, but Paris won. And once Paris was locked in, the story more or less wrote itself, in the loosest possible sense of wrote itself. Samanosuke gets pulled through time into modern-day 2004 Paris. A French police officer named Jacques Blanc gets pulled back to feudal Japan. They have to figure out how to swap back, save their respective timelines, and also defeat Nobunaga's demonic army on 2 different fronts simultaneously. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I genuinely believe that's why it works. There's something about a premise this committed to its own madness that bypasses your critical brain entirely. You don't question the time travel logic. You don't ask why demons are in Paris. You just go with it. Because the game never blinks, never winks at the camera. It plays it completely straight. I imagine the Capcom boardroom the day someone pitched this. A long silence, and then someone going, "It's such a stupid idea, it might actually work, let's do it." And they did it. Now here's where things get genuinely impressive, because the ambition didn't stop at the story. The professional himself, not a lookalike, not a voice actor. The face of Léon, one of the most recognizable icons in European cinema, in full motion capture, lending his likeness and weary growl to Jacques Blanc. For a video game in 2004, that was practically unheard of. On the Japanese side, Takeshi Kaneshiro reprises Samanosuke, the same year he appeared in House of Flying Daggers. So you have 2 legitimate international film stars anchoring this thing. But the detail that always gets me, the one I think deserves way more recognition, is Donnie Yen. You know that opening sequence? Samanosuke on the giant beetle ship, cutting through waves of demons? That choreography was designed by Donnie Yen, the man who made Ip Man, the man who played Chirrut Imwe in Rogue One. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Yeah, that Donnie Yen. He spent what I've read was close to 2 years working on that sequence alone. And at the time, barely anyone talked about the technical feat. The French star got the press, the time-traveling twist got the headlines. Donnie Yen's contribution just sat there, quietly extraordinary, in the opening minutes of a PS2 game. So is the game actually good? Yeah, it is. The gameplay is action-focused, more so than the first 2 entries. The horror elements are largely gone, which I know bothers some people, but the combat is clean and satisfying. Not overly technical, but that's not really the point. It moves, it flows, and the new engine, Capcom ditched the fixed camera in favor of a dynamic one, building on what they'd experimented with in Code Veronica. It holds up. Some sections still look genuinely beautiful, the port level especially. There's something about the light on the water that I find weirdly affecting, even now. The story? It's fine. It's a delivery device for the spectacle and for getting these two characters into increasingly absurd situations. Don't go in expecting Kurosawa. Go in expecting a very expensive, very committed action film, and you'll have a great time. Capcom set a target of 700,000 copies worldwide. They hit 430,000 in the first week alone and around 570,000 in Japan by the end of the year. Not a disaster by any stretch. A success, in fact. And then there's the katana controller. Because someone, somewhere, decided that what this game really needed was a physical katana-shaped peripheral that you could swing around instead of using a regular controller. All the buttons were crammed onto the hilt. It was completely impractical. It was ergonomically baffling. It was, almost certainly, a terrible way to play the game. And I love it with my whole heart. Because it's the logical conclusion of everything Onimusha 3 represents. Someone had the audacity to ask, what if, and then actually followed through. Here's the thing about Onimusha 3 that I keep coming back to. By modern standards, it shouldn't exist. A franchise entry that swaps genres, transplants its protagonist to a different continent and century, casts international film stars, hires a martial arts legend to choreograph a video game cutscene, and ships a novelty weapon peripheral alongside it? In 2026, that game gets cancelled in pre-production. Someone runs a focus group. The Reddit discourse becomes a thing. A risk assessment document is filed. But in 2004, someone just did it. Because they had a vision, a talented team, and apparently very little to lose. The game is imperfect. The story is silly. The katana controller will absolutely give you a hand cramp. But it has soul. It has the soul of a project that believed in its own absurd premise completely and executed it with genuine craft and ambition. And honestly, that's rarer than it sounds. And God, do I miss this kind of madness today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you had a similar experience with some wacky game that gave you a great time, but you think that by modern standard wouldn't exist, I would love to hear about it in the comments.